Hey everyone, we are back. This is Chris, your host of Love Means Nothing. David Zork is with us again. He apparently is a fan favorite. Everyone liked listening to him, so I'm bringing him on to go through the Australian Open draw. David, how you doing?
Chris, I'm excited to be back. I'm glad the fans like me. I got a new headset today, so hopefully the sound quality is popping.
It looks good. It looks good on you. And the sound's better.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Nice. Okay, so let's jump in the Australian Open. What do you think's the biggest surprise so far?
I think it's got to be the number of young guys that made it deep in the draw this tournament. I think there were 5 teenagers that made it to the round of 32. We still got one left in the draw. My boy Arthur Cazot, if that's how you pronounce it, I think. He's not really my boy. I honestly didn't know anything about him until the Australian Open started. And
so where did he come from? Like, I believe now that he's on this stage, you know, some of the commentators like Mannarino are saying that this guy was one of the best juniors, but then he sustained some injuries, so he hasn't really been on the scene. But did he win some junior Grand Slams? I know he's a French kid. He's like 19 years old. He just beat Rune, and then he backed that up by destroying Griekspoor. He's got a huge game, but I had actually never heard of him before, which is rare because following tennis quite closely, his name had literally never come up before on my radar.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as you. I knew absolutely nothing about the kid until Australian Open. So, I mean, I did some digging, and he was a top junior, and then, dude, just dealt with a bunch of injuries. I think in 2016, had an elbow fracture. 2017 was out 7 months. Then 5 months out in 2018 with a foot fracture. Tore something in 2019. Then out again 8 months in 2021 because of a sports hernia. Like, he's just been through it all. And I think he's only had one career win on tour before this Australian Open. It was in 2021 against Adrian Mannarino. So who knows what level of Mannarino that was in 2021. But actually, funnily enough, he hit a 5-1 record against Holger Rune in the juniors growing up. So it seemed like he's kind of had his number throughout. I wish I knew that before I put some money on Rune to beat him, but did not know that. And I guess like the guy just lives rent-free in his head.
Yeah, you know, but then I could see that, right? When you just are fully confident against another player, obviously having that type of record against Rune, even throughout the juniors, like the guy can ball, but then he goes and backs it up against Griekspoor, beating him 3-1. And Griekspoor is a tough competitor. That almost impressed me more than beating somebody who you have a long history in juniors with. And like the pressure probably doesn't get to you as much because you're comfortable with who's on the other side of the court. But then to back it up, I feel like some people, like they really like, even Shelton came out of his shell at the Australian Open last year. I feel like the Australian Open is the one Grand Slam where people kind of appear on the scene that you've never seen before.
Yeah, totally. And I think going back to that original point, I think, you know, like every now and then we see those wins where like a young guy or somebody will beat a Djokovic or Nadal or a big name in a Grand Slam. But what's almost even tougher is backing it up after that, because you get on such a high where you're like, oh my God. I mean, this guy in this tournament just made like life-changing money, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to kind of go back and be like, oh wait, I can still win this. And now he has Hurkacz next, which isn't a bad 4th round match. Like,
yeah,
he's
like Hurkacz is obviously a tough opponent, but I feel like the Australian Open, he's never had huge success. I don't think it's his favorite court. It's maybe a little bit slower than he likes, so I think it's definitely winnable.
It is. And then, I mean, after that, he would have Medvedev, which I don't know how winnable. I don't know how winnable that is. I mean, Medvedev had a hell of a match. Who was it against? Oh yeah, RoosterVory. Yeah, I mean, down 2 sets. I got up at 6:30 in the morning. I checked. I'm like, oh, he's down 2 sets. I woke up 2 hours later and he had won. I was like, what the hell just happened? But Medvedev.
Yeah, I got up in the morning for work, and usually all the matches are finished, you know, like 3 or 4 hours before I get up. We're on obviously West Coast time in Vancouver, Canada. And I thought it must have just something happened. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it went too late, and then they decided to like delay the 5th set. And then I realized that it was actually like they were just taking a break after the fourth, going into the fifth. It's one of the latest matches ever played. I don't really have as much of a problem with it as everyone else has, it seems like, about some of these matches going late into the night. It's obviously not ideal for tennis, just the fan base. They can't really stay up till 4 a.m. for matches. But it's funny because the Australian Open decided to get an extra day in. They started on a Sunday versus a Monday. And the apparent reasoning was to prevent these late night matches. I think we all know it's about, being able to bring an extra day of the crowd and make that extra money from the media rights, etc. But, they were being called out quite a bit on social media about, oh yeah, it's really about the players and the players' health when 5 days into the tournament, there's a match going on until 4 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the idea that I think they should have postponed it to another day or waited before and just, I mean, start it the next day. I mean, especially if you have an extra day now. I think I heard somewhere that Medvedev went to sleep at like 7:30 in the morning, which, I mean, like for like recovery purposes, like I mean, he came back and beat Felix handily, which was a little surprising, just given how little
Okay,
recovery he had.
I've got some thoughts on that. First off, Medvedev said he's a very good sleeper, and he said he can
Yeah,
sleep at anywhere at any time. So I guess he went straight to bed and was able to have a good sleep.
maybe
The
he's
other
built
thing that
different.
he is built a little different. The other thing I like about Medvedev is that he didn't complain about it. Okay, so a lot of like, especially, well, who other play a lot? Definitely on the women's tour, it happens a lot. There are definitely some men as well, but like Murray's complained. There's been numerous complaints on both sides. But Medvedev's match went till 4 a.m. It would have been very easy for him to blame the tournament organizers, whatever. I never heard him complain once about the match starting at 11 p.m. and going till 4 a.m. Did you?
I mean, I didn't. I mean, maybe he's a night owl. Maybe he wanted this all along. I guess I don't know.
And then he backed it up against Felix. I'm surprised that you're surprised because Felix, yes, he made the third round, which is good for him. He was your biggest disappointment. You said
He
in the last part
was.
of 2023. I personally don't see any changes in his game that would suggest this year is going to be any different for him. He had a pretty decent draw, let's be honest, and then he got absolutely destroyed by Medvedev. Did you have other types of expectations? Was it just because you thought Medvedev would be drained after that late five setter?
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest thing. I thought Medvedev's recovery would kind of come to bite him in the butt. I I guess I expected Felix maybe to win a set or two. Um, I think overall it's still a solid Australian Open for Felix, given he's lost in the first round of the last three majors. Like, honestly, at this point, just to get any wins down is kind of like a confidence boost. And I thought maybe after winning two matches or so, he'd start to get into a little bit of rhythm. But clearly it hadn't happened. I watched the first couple of games. I saw some misses that were like some forehands late, which he would miss by like 12 feet, or like backhands long, where I was like these are just like crazy misses that you don't really see, and maybe his timing
Right.
was off. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's kind of that is Felix.
Yeah.
Like this is not new to me. Like he just goes after it, kind of like Chapo. He's a little bit more controlled than Chapo, but you know what I mean. Like every time he hits the ball, I don't know if it's going to go 10 feet out or not. So anyway, he needs to get that under control. Maybe he needs a new team around him, fix his game a little bit. But let's move on. Let's stick with Medvedev for now, though. So his next match is against, and I'm going to butcher the guy's name. He's Portuguese. He looks like a young guy to me too. Borges, Borges. Don't know how to pronounce it. He
Borgia.
just came up.
I don't know.
Borgia. He just came off a big win against Dimitrov, which was disappointing to me because I'm not a massive Dimitrov fan, but I like Dimitrov. I think most tennis fans do. It felt like this was a good opportunity for him to play, Medvedev in the fourth round of a Grand Slam. He's had some success against Medvedev. I'm not saying he would have beat him, but this is a match clearly you would expect him to get through. There was a small opportunity here. He won the first set and then he lost the next three sets. Dimitrov came in to the tournament in pretty good form. I think the warm-up tournament he was playing better. I think he won it actually. This was the first loss I think of the
Yeah.
year for Dimitrov. Um, did you watch the match? What do you think? And what do you think about this Portuguese guy?
I watched a little bit of it. I mean, to me, honestly, Dimitrov is probably the biggest disappointment of the tournament. I think you could probably throw in a guy like Safin in there and Shevchenko, although those are unseeded guys who I thought were going to make deeper runs. But Dimitrov, it seemed like everything was starting to click for him, like we talked about at the end of 2023, how he had a really good run. Started 2024 off like incredibly, and to get, I mean, I think, honestly, I don't know the pronunciation either, but it seems like it would be like Borges or
Right.
something. But to get Borges in the third round, who's ranked like 65, 70, and to not be able to come through there, I think that's a major disappointment. I think even after losing the second set, it almost seemed like he started to tank in the third set. Like he was down 4-0 quickly, and I mean that is quite disappointing. I think had he got Medvedev, he could have gave Medvedev a run for his money. At least winning maybe a set or two and making things interesting
Right.
there. But I expect Medvedev to be comfortable in this next round.
It shows how deep though the men's game is as well. That there are these guys that are 67 in the world, and like Dimitrov didn't play his best, but I watched a little bit of the match, and this other guy, like, he can ball. You know what I mean? Like, it was insane how good of a tennis player is, and he's 67 in the world. It just shows that like how competitive it is in tennis these days. But I still think Medvedev, he's one of those guys that like he's just too steady, too strong, too smart for him. So I expect Medvedev to get through him in 3, and then Medvedev should play the winner, or would play the winner of Hurkacz versus Cazot, which again is a pretty good draw. So, Medvedev, no one's really talking about him like most people have. Since Alcaraz hit the scene, Medvedev has really fallen off as far as like in the conversation of potential winners of Grand Slams. But, watch out, because you were saying that you think Medvedev's kind of figured Alcaraz out a little bit. So Medvedev could be kind of that guy that gets to the finals and maybe actually comes out with a win here.
Well, and Alcaraz has looked kind of shaky. Like I watched a big part of that Sonego match, and everybody seems to be talking about how Alcaraz kind of looks maybe a step slower, something like that. I also believe that like I don't want to look too much into the early matches. I think there's a lot of like just getting rust off for these big guys like Djokovic and Alcaraz. So I don't look into that too much. He looked pretty good against JC Chang, although JC Chang kind of rolled over like a dog.
Like, what's up with that? Is he just a huge pussy? I'm sorry, but
Man,
you're in the third round on Margaret Court Arena playing Alcaraz, and your quad hurts. Obviously, it wasn't like a major injury. It kind of felt like he knew he was getting smoked, and he was kind of like faking it. He was tanking a little bit. That was pathetic. Dude. And then he was looking at his dad, being like, "Oh, can I have permission to quit?" And his dad was just like tight-lipped, wouldn't say anything. It was hilarious. It was embarrassing,
dude. And I'm especially disappointed because, dude, I had this guy as one of my breakout stars of the year, and I felt really good about it. I'm like, look, this guy's in the third round. Like, maybe I got something right here. And then, like, I mean, in the second set, he's looking over at his dad. Like, I get that you're young, but like, daddy can't make decisions for you. Like, it's like, come on.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
It was disappointing. And then to just like retire, I mean, I don't know.
Okay, okay. I'll just like, just so you feel better. That was one of your picks, and he
feel better.
And he still went to the third round. Yeah. I actually, in a previous pod, I'm like, watch out for Shevchenko in the Australian Open, because in one of the warm-up tournaments, he played Etcheverry, and he beat Etcheverry, and I knew Etcheverry was coming in playing well. And so I'm like, okay, and I've been watching this guy for a while, and I feel like he's going to break out. And then in the first match, it was literally the first match of the Australian Open, the first time I checked the scores, and he like lost to I don't know, Munar or some nobody, like 3-3-1 or something stupid. I'm assuming he must have came in with a little bit of an injury, but you know what I mean? Sometimes our picks don't always work out. But for Shang getting to third round against Alcaraz, even if he played well, he was going to lose that match. So I don't think that was a terrible pick.
Yeah, but I mean, I filled out a bracket challenge before the tournament. I had Shevchenko making the fourth round, and like Munar, I thought beating Munar was a lock. I don't know the last time Munar's won on a hard court. Like, I expect him
Yeah.
to just be like a clay court specialist. And I mean, like, okay, if he lost in 5 sets, maybe, whatever, had a bad day. But like, what, to lose? Yeah, I think it was like
He mu-
comfortably in
he
3 sets. It
he
was
must have
ridiculous.
stepped on the court injured, or he's just mentally messed up, because there's no
No,
other
no,
reason for that.
no other explanation. I don't know. And Safalin too. I expected Safalin to have a deep run. I even forget who he lost to, but he lost in the first round to somebody.
Yeah, but it was a tough. It was he played. I forget too, but it was a tough draw for
Was
Safalin.
it?
It was against. Doesn't matter. I'll find it later. But let's talk about Mannarino for a second here, okay? Because is this guy on some sort of banned substances right now? Because Mannarino's always had a good career, but not an amazing career. You know what I mean? He's hovered around 40 in the world. He's never really been dangerous against like the top guys. He makes the game look freaking easy. Okay, he's
Yeah.
one of those players at all levels of tennis where you play someone that's very unorthodox, but they drive you crazy on the tennis court. He's doing that at the highest level of the game, and he goes and he beats Shelton. Shelton obviously was pretty pissed off because he expected to win that match.
Yeah.
What's going on with Mannarino at the age of 35 or whatever he is right now in his mid 30s, playing the best tennis of his life and making these deep runs?
Dude, I have no clue. I think it's just a matter of like guys are super uncomfortable against him because he plays like nobody else and he has these weird gimmicks. And I saw a point against Shelton where he like threw his racket to hit the ball and then the ball went over the net.
And
It
it
was
went
the
in.
first time I've ever seen that in my life. And
Yeah.
I actually found out something interesting about Mannarino the other day, which was that every time he waits until 1 hour before the match to figure out who he's playing. So apparently he doesn't even know the draw in advance. So Mannarino's chilling at home right now. He doesn't even know that he's playing Djokovic. I think he's in for like a rude awakening when he finds that out. But it was an interesting thing. It was like, I'm trying to figure out his mindset into why. I mean, maybe he just doesn't. I mean, he doesn't prepare anyway, probably. So
Yeah, I know people were talking about that on social media after. I got a couple like calls from friends being like, "Hey, did you hear what Mannarino said? This guy's super cool. He's super chill. He doesn't care." Which I found a little odd too, but I have to admit that Djokovic is, in my opinion, is about as bad of a matchup as it goes for Mannarino, because Mannarino is the type of player that's able to find a weakness in his opponent and expose it and drive his opponent crazy because he'll always key in on that. But Djokovic doesn't have any weaknesses.
yeah,
So I think Djokovic is just going to be way too solid for him, and it's going to be a 3-set win.
yeah. I mean, as a Djokovic fan, like I would have much rather seen Djokovic Shelton. I wanted to see the pick up the phone thing
So did
again, the
I.
celebration, and it just would have been a way better match. Like if this match is at 2 a.m., I'm not staying up to watch Djokovic Mannarino. For Shelton, I might have, but
I think most tennis fans are disappointed about that too. Obviously, the rematch of the U.S. Open semi, a little bit of beef around the phone drop,
yeah,
etc. Like, Matt, it'll be a fun match to watch, but it could
I
easily
don't
have been a
know.
first round match as well. You know what I mean? It's not that
Yeah,
great. I'm not staying up to 2 a.m. to watch that match either.
no.
I actually thought Shelton was going to beat Mannarino because Mannarino on the ad side, he drives people crazy with the really wide lefty serve that he has, and he brings people off
Yeah,
the court. But that feeds into Shelton's forehand being another lefty. So I thought Shelton was going to be able to manage that and win the match, but apparently not.
yeah. I mean, from what I watched, at least, it seemed like Shelton would just sometimes go like too big in big moments. Where I think
Yeah.
you see, I think you see that with these young guys in general. We're just like going for a winner and just like the ball is in my court sort of thing, and whatever happens is going to happen. And I think they just need to play a little smarter in some of those moments, like higher percentage shots, and then eventually you'll get a short ball and you attack. Like especially when Shelton's like ripping his backhand from 4 feet behind the baseline, going for winners. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that's sustainable against any guy that gets a lot of balls back.
And Mannarino's a counter puncher, so he almost liked it.
Exactly.
He was almost kind of
Yeah.
playing into his game a little bit. You
Yeah.
know who might be the most clutch player so far at the Australian Open is Kecmanovic. So he had
Unbelievable.
dude, against Struff in the second
Unbelievable.
round. I think he had I think he had a match point against him. It was a 5th set tiebreak. It was very close. I believe Struff did have a match point against him.
He did.
He had a backhand slice and he hit it long. Kecmanovic then pulls that one out of nowhere. And then against Tommy Paul yesterday in the 4th set, Tommy Paul had 2 separate match points. Kecmanovic fought those off and then goes and routs him in the 5th, 6-love.
Dude, that's my Serbian boy, Miomir Kecmanovic.
Yeah.
I was watching that Struff match and I was stressed as can be, and I couldn't believe he pulled it off. And then against Paul, I thought he would almost have nothing left in the tank. Although the Struff match, it was 5 sets but 3.5 hours. It was weirdly short because both sets that Struff won were 6-1, 6-1. And anyway, yeah. I thought Paul would just kind of grind him down sort of thing. And Kecmanovic won the first set, then lost the next 2, 3-2. And I was like, okay, it's a good run for my boy. Comes back, saves some match points, 6-0 in the 5th. And we'll see, against Alcaraz, if he's got something left in the tank, that'll be a good match. Because I think they had a really good match in Miami a couple years ago. And Kecmanovic has been playing well. I think he beat Draper in Davis Cup. He was playing well for Serbia in Davis Cup overall. I think a couple years back, he was up to 25 in the world. Now he's kind of down to 60. Dealt with some injuries.
Is he only 60 now?
Yes. So, again, another one of those guys that 60th in the world, playing well, just like my boy, Thomas Mahac, who we can get into later. You know how much I like him. But yeah,
Kecmanovic. The thing about Kecmanovic, yeah, I think so too. The thing about however you pronounce his name, I don't know, some random Serbian name. He's just he's a great player, but he's also kind of boring to watch because he's not a good looking guy. Okay, he's not a good looking guy. He's got kind of chubby legs. No, it's more like an acne beard. But he's obviously a good player.
Yeah, I was looking at his beard and I was thinking to myself, my guy, you got a weak beard game.
Yeah. But it's kind of like an Amish beard. It's just under his neck. It's like a neck beard. You know what I mean? Under his chin.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. Bublik does the same thing. Yeah. And I just want to literally get a little razor blade and shave that off for Bublik.
It's a little bit like your beard back in the day, to be honest.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I know you had that little chin strap going back in the day. Finally can grow it out a little
the chin strap. No, the chin strap looked good. I'm thinking about bringing it back.
Oh, yeah? What's the wifey going to think about that?
I don't know. Hey, talking about Serbian players and guys that look good and guys that look not so good, Djokovic started the tournament maybe a little bit shaky. I know he was under the weather, and then he came back in his 3rd round and he looked more solid against Echeverry. But the doubters were out. You know what I mean? He goes to 4 sets in his first 2 matches. It wasn't even a 5-setter, but everyone says, okay, finally age is catching up to Novak. They're looking for the slightest little bit of weakness. Do you think Joker's a lock-in to win this tournament like he's been last year? You know what I mean? Or even the year before, or when he wasn't banned because of COVID?
Joker, he was doing that on purpose. He wants to he wants everybody else to think that they have hope, and then he's like, oh, everyone's like, oh, look, Djokovic isn't human. And then when he needs to, he turns it up. It's the typical Djokovic. No, in all seriousness, the Croatian kid looked pretty good. He pushed him quite a bit. Popper, I was always scared against. I'm always scared against those guys that have big games, because I don't a guy like Echeverry is essentially the same player as Djokovic, but Djokovic just does every single thing better than him. And against those sorts of guys, those grinders, I never really get scared of. It's those guys with big games, like a Shelton, who can potentially hit Djokovic off the court. I think Popperin has a little bit of that in him, where he has a big forehand, big serve. He has looked.
What did you think of Prismic shorts? Did you like I think you probably like the really short, tight shorts there. Those are some of the smallest shorts I've ever seen on the tennis court. The guy has massive quads for his age, but those shorts were a little ridiculous. They look like spandex.
I think everybody's shorts are getting short. Everybody's getting shorter and shorter. Raonic.
Who else? There's another. Yeah, Raonic is where he was rocking the Lululemon, so he's no longer with New Balance.
Well, the short,
and they were short.
Short socks. He's just showing off the whole leg. I mean,
Dude, why would anybody why would any man in tennis do the ankle sock?
I don't. I haven't worn the ankle sock since I was like 8 years old,
Dude,
dude.
that's like the Marty Fish special, but it always looked like shit.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It makes your legs kind of just look small. Like you might as well pull those socks up to the calves where there's some like size.
Well, no, it's an actual thing where longer socks make your calves look bigger.
Yeah, of course.
And then the shorter socks make your legs look longer. But if you're 6'7" Milos Raonic, I don't think you need your legs to look any longer. Like I understand if like a 5'8" dude did it. But I don't know.
There is a bunch of short shorts. I know that people are talking about it.
Yeah.
Then there's Mannarino rocking the like ugly Lululemon that are like going down past his knees as well.
the basketball shorts.
Mannarino doesn't give a shit.
No, he doesn't give a fuck. He's in here to collect his little check. I mean, he'll come out of the tournament with 400 grand.
Well,
he'll spend half.
But
of it
apparently,
on tequila. He'll have a good time, man.
Dude, apparently Mannarino has a sugar daddy, so he doesn't need the money.
Does he?
Apparently,
according to which credible source?
Apparently, that's a source from somebody on the tour. But I cannot drop names for something that revealing.
I didn't know you were plugged in like this. I didn't know you had sources. Is it Renee Stubbs? Is she telling you this or?
No, it's definitely not Renee. Renee doesn't talk to me. She doesn't like me. I like her. I want to be friends with Renee. I've said that, but she doesn't like me.
Yeah, just not on talking. I wonder why. I wonder why you guys aren't on talking terms. But we don't need to get into that.
So Djokovic plays Mannarino. Should walk through that, and then he plays the winner of Fritz and Tsitsipas. Kyrgios tweeted something a few days ago predicting Tsitsipas was going to win the Australian Open, which I found odd just based on Tsitsipas's game, but also it's a tough draw. You know what I mean? He'd have to go through Djokovic, Sinner, and potentially Alcaraz. Fritz came out of the gates super shaky, as he typically does. He had a terrible season last year in the Grand Slams. But then he started to find his game a little bit. He's had a pretty good draw, let's be honest. And he plays Tsitsipas in the fourth. What's going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tsitsipas rolls through him. But I think it was an awful take. I don't know. It was especially strange because I listened to some of those interviews with Kyrgios and Djokovic, and like Kyrgios kept on talking about how like Djokovic is the GOAT, and he kept on like just like sucking up to Djokovic like there's no tomorrow. And I mean, you'd think that he would have Djokovic as a winner. But yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like to have to beat potentially Djokovic, then Sinner, then Alcaraz. I mean, there's no bigger gauntlet in tennis right now. And I don't know. I just don't trust, like in this Tsitsipas Fritz matchup, I just don't trust Fritz really. I'd be very happy if Fritz comes out of that because, I mean, Djokovic rolls through Fritz every single time they play. And Tsitsipas has the game again where like he could potentially scare Djokovic. We saw it at that French Open where they went 5 sets. Tsitsipas won the first 2. I don't know. I mean, I think Tsitsipas wins that. I think then Djokovic beats Tsitsipas. Again, still hoping that Fritz comes out of that, but probably won't.
It was interesting because in our last time we chatted, you know, we talked a little bit about Tsitsipas' serve, and I said, you know, it's a little weird. It could use improvement. Sinner started dragging his foot, and what do you know? In the first match, and he's kind of been going back and forth, I think, a little bit. He started changing up his motion. People were talking about he started dragging his back foot in. What's going on there? Is he still dragging his foot? Did we just like call exactly what Tsitsipas should do, and somehow he was working on it at that exact same time?
I think you might have. I think honestly, Tsitsipas has to listen to this podcast, and he's got to hire you as his coach because I know he's having some difficulties with his dad. You know, those are always a thing. And you know, with your tennis knowledge and with your serve especially, I think you can bring a lot to.
Yeah,
Tsitsipas.
I think you're probably right. I think he probably should bring me on. With his dad, remember when he fired his dad last year as the coach, and I thought that it was kind of like Badosa's doing. Like Badosa was giving him the evil eye at Wimbledon. Like this was being talked about. I don't know if their relationship was that good. And then all of a sudden he fires his dad, and then he starts losing every single match, and then he brings him back on his team. Do you think Badosa and Tsitsipas's dad have a little bit of beef, or do you think they're getting along well now?
Well, I don't know. Was Tsitsipas' dad like hitting on her, or what was happening there? Because I've heard
It could have
stories.
been. I could see
Well,
that. Is
I've
his
heard
dad? Has his
stories
dad
of
a bit
him.
of a player?
Well, that's what we've heard, that he's a little bit of an interesting character, to say the least. So
Is he a bit
yeah,
of a womanizer?
I, I don't know. I don't know enough about him, but I mean, maybe.
Okay, if you were playing that match, okay, who would you rather have in your box? Fritz's girlfriend or Tsitsipas's girlfriend Badosa?
I mean, I feel like Badosa could at least give you some pointers. Like Fritz's girlfriend is just annoying there in the box. Like she just wants to be there just for like the Instagram and stuff. Like it feels like she's not even like, at least show some emotion, right? Like be excited. Like you don't just have to like, it's not all for Instagram, okay? It's I saw her and Fritz were like sharing or like trying Djokovic's new drink or something, like the electrolytes, which I thought was,
Hmm.
I mean, it was finally like maybe her first good piece of content, but it was a little bit
So you're not a
interesting
bit.
to
So
see.
you'd rather have Badosa in your box than Fritz's girlfriend? Then you think she's in it just for her own kind of like her own Instagram, her own popularity? I think there's probably a little bit of truth there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know her well enough to, or know her at all to be
Well,
able
you
to
don't know
speak
her at
on that.
all.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know her at all to be able to speak on it, but I don't. It just seems a little bit suspect.
Do you know
And
that they met just like? Do you know they just met like on like an online site,
yeah, wasn't it like a
like a
Tinder or
Bumble or
something?
something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of
yeah,
random that like Taylor Fritz, would be on that. You know what I mean? Like, at the time he's probably like 25 in the world,
yeah,
and you're swiping, and then Taylor Fritz just pops up.
yeah. And who's like a good looking 6'4" dude
Yeah,
who travels the world? Like,
he's probably
yeah,
just travels the world. You know what I mean? And when he goes to different countries, he just like hits it up to meet new girls.
yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, I
Did
guess
you watch
so.
her on Breakpoint?
The new season.
Yeah.
I haven't watched. I haven't watched it yet. But
Do you think Fritz? Do you think Fritz is smart? Like, do you think like okay? Do you think he's an intelligent person? What do you think about his like IQ on the tennis court?
I mean, I don't really think anything negatively of his IQ. Like, do you think his
I
IQ is
actually
like
think
holding his
he.
back
Well, I think
or what?
sometimes I think actually on the tennis court, I think he's pretty. I don't think he's not smart on the tennis court. I think you have
Yeah,
to have all to be at that level. You have to have pretty high IQ, high tennis IQ for sure. I would say probably some of his life decisions, but who am I to judge, right? All I know is that there's been like, I don't know if I would say
man,
that he's probably made the
you're
best life decisions, but look at him, he's doing pretty well. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I can't really hate because that would make me look so stupid.
Chris Hasek-Watt, a pillar of life decisions. Just
All right, let's move down the draw. So Sinner, Hatchinoff, another fourth round, and whoever wins
that's
that
a
will play the
good
winner
fourth.
of
That's a good fourth round.
whoever wins that will play the winner of Demir Rublev. Let's start with Sinner, Hatchinoff. Hatchinoff's impressed me because he was injured for the most part of last year, at least the second half of last year. So you never know a person coming back. He started to find his game, I think, throughout the tournament. I think even starting out, he wasn't sure physically if he could withstand it. You know what I mean? How good his game would be. He got through a couple tough matches, and now he's starting to hit his stride. But he's up against Sinner, who is actually looking very good now. Everyone jumped on the Sinner bandwagon at the end of last year, understandably so. I always had my doubts because he hasn't done anything really too amazing in majors yet, but he's looking very good. What do you expect for this match?
I think Sinner has probably easily looked like the best player so far this tournament. I mean, he's lost
I agree.
what, like 15 games? I mean, in the last two matches, he's lost 10 games, which is
Yeah.
like unheard of. And he's just been like
Yeah.
absolutely running through opponents. I mean, the counter argument to that is he hasn't really faced any challenges so far. So what happens when he runs into a guy like Kecmanovic who's playing well and maybe will take him 4 or 5 sets? I think Kachanov's playing really, really well. I was watching that match closely against Mahach, where I still think Mahach should have probably won that match. Although Kachanov won in 4 sets,
Why?
Mahach was 2 of 19 on break points, and Kachanov was 2 of 3 on break points. And so at the end of the day, that's just
Wow.
experience there. Where, I mean, if
Yeah.
he goes 5 of 19 on those break points, he probably wins that match. But regardless, Hachanov's playing super well. I still expect Sinner to probably win that in 4. And the winner of that has another tough match, Rublev or de Minaur, both of who are playing quite well. I think that section is just like, that's a really strong section of the draw.
Yeah, I think Sinner is going to be too strong for Hachinov. I think he might go in a little drained as well. He's been playing a lot of tennis, after not playing much tennis. So I think when you combine just Sinner having a better game right now, and then the physicality of it, Sinner coming in super fresh. And
Yeah.
like you said, probably losing only 15 games. So I think that will probably might be the first couple sets will be close. Maybe Hachinov will take one of them, but I think Sinner in 3 or 4. And then the de Minaur Rublev, that actually will be a pretty close match, I think. I don't love either of
I,
them to get through Sinner, to be honest. I think the buck stops there. Sinner will have a pretty relatively easy time, I think, with either of them. But this match is good. De Minaur is playing probably the best tennis of his life right now. Rublev is playing probably how Rublev plays. He just came off of a win, super solid player, but he can't seem to get through. He's never gotten through the quarters of a Grand Slam. He's been there 8 times.
yeah.
When he gets to that higher level, he just falls a little bit short. He might get through de Minaur, but then he's going to lose in the quarters anyway. You know what I mean? So I'd actually rather see de Minaur get through, because I think it would be more interesting to watch like a hometown guy in de Minaur play Sinner. I just think it'd be more fun to watch.
Yeah, and I think styles make fights, and I think there's such a big contrast in a de Minaur against Sinner match where Sinner absolutely hits the shit out of every single ball, and de Minaur is like your typical grinder, counter puncher, gets every single ball back. And I think that match would be super exciting to watch.
What do you think about Kyrgios commentating? It's kind of like he's left the game essentially. Like I said this on a previous pod as well. I'm like, he's just starting to grow his kind of career as a personality in the media
Yeah.
world, etc. He started his own pod. Now he's commentating. I actually think that he's doing a pretty good job, but it's interesting because he's super positive. I mean, as commentators are, you can't shit on everybody like he
Yeah.
likes to do. Right. So he's taking a different approach at it. He's going in with a plan. I think he's doing actually a pretty good job. What do you think?
I really like listening to, like, especially current players commentating matches, because I think they can give a totally different insight than some of these commentators. Like a guy like Johnny McEnroe, for example. I mean, I generally don't mind him, but he hasn't played tennis professionally in what, like 30, however many years, and he's for sure never played against these guys, for example. And a guy like Kyrgios has played against these guys so many times, and so he just has a different, like, point of view and perspective. Similarly to Chris Eubanks, who I saw last night, and I was interested to see. I'm like, oh, what's Chris Eubanks doing on ESPN? But he's well spoken. Again, he's commentating the Medvedev match and played a 5-setter against Medvedev in Wimbledon, so he knows, like, things about Medvedev's game that these commentators just don't know. And I mean, I love it. I think it's a little bit weird to see current players doing it, because you don't really see it in any other sport. I mean, in basketball, for
Yeah.
example, you see it all
Well,
the
you
time.
sometimes
Guys
do
like,
in basketball, like in the playoffs, if someone's out.
yes, yeah, fair. I guess a guy like Draymond Green will come on. I guess in the NFL, you saw it where I think it was like Greg Olson, for example, at the end of his career, as soon as he retired, Jason Witten again. So I guess you see it every now and then, but those guys that are like in the prime of their career, I guess sometimes you don't see it as often. But I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. It gives a different point of view than anything else.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny how some of like the older people in the game, they're still holding on to the reins. Like, and this is jumping to a different topic, but we'll get back to the men. I want to finish off the men's draw. But when we're talking about older people in the game, like Martina Navratilova and Chrissy Evert, they are actually the largest voices that are against the women playing in Saudi Arabia. It's actually not the current voices. Whether you agree with it or not, they are by far the two most outspoken, loudest voices. And the current players, they want to collect as big a checks as they can, and they don't seem to have as big of a moral issue with playing in Saudi. But, I find that interesting that these two people, legends of the game in their own right, but now they're influencing where the women's game is going, even if the active players may not want it to go that way.
Well, I mean, let's be real. Like someone like Chrissy Evert, if the WTA goes to Saudi Arabia, is she getting a penny of that? Probably not, right? Like when you have $100 million in front of you, or however much money you have, like literally life-changing money, I can see how you can kind of turn a blind eye to it. It was the same thing with like Nadal. Like I know there's a big controversy of he's now the like some ambassador of tennis for Saudi Arabia.
Ambassador.
Yeah. And they asked Iga Swiatek about it, thinking that maybe she would have some controversial like opinions about it, but she was like, "Oh, like Nadal can do whatever he wants," and it was kind of like it's an answer you would expect. Like she didn't bash him at all because Nadal is her idol. But I was even trying to read. I was trying to read and see if she had like some different points of view about that maybe last year, and see if she was like contradicting herself. But her point of view has kind of remained the same. I think I read last summer she was also saying like, yeah, I'll play in Saudi Arabia. I don't mind. Like it gets to a point where we saw it with golf as well. Like when you're offered $500 million, I mean, it gets to a point where like,
Dude, well, okay. Well, that's exactly where I was going to go. Like you've got Will Zalatoris, right? The American golfer, the young guy. He was offered 110 million
exactly
to join Live, and he turned it down.
That's ridiculous.
To be one with the PGA Tour, you know what I mean? And then 6 months later, they amalgamated, and Live and PGA, they're working closer together now, and he's super pissed. I think maybe there's a lawsuit going on around it, but you don't want to be that guy, right? That turns down a massive chunk of change. And then you understand that in the future, either way, like this is going to happen one way or another. And you know what I mean? You might as well get paid right now because you're not going to change, the path of the future regardless in your decision. That's why I think Nadal actually, it's helping the game. It's making it more international. Yes, you may not agree with all of Saudi politics, but you could say that about a lot of different countries. Okay. And I understand that they're doing a bit of sports washing these days, and it's working for them for sure. They're definitely their reputation on the international level has improved, I would say, drastically after all of what they've done in sports with regards to Live, with regards to Ronaldo, with regards to F1, and now tennis. It might actually cost them billions of dollars because I don't know if they'll ever make that money back on Live. But at the same time, it's bringing in probably way more tourism. It's bringing in way more investment. So if you actually look at it holistically as a whole, it's probably a very smart political move. And they're actually paying these players through like their sovereign wealth fund. It's literally like Saudi government money.
It's literally an investment. Like, and I don't think
it is.
I don't think they really care if they lose a couple $100 million here or there. Like they have money.
That's what I'm saying. But I think overall they're actually making the money back through other avenues.
Yeah, and like, but back to that Will Zalatoris topic. Like it's sometimes a little bit interesting to see like when some of these legends of the game go to Saudi because they have like Nadal, for example. I mean, he has enough money for generations upon generations, but like some of these young guys, like you really can't blame them. Like, and I think it's stupid when a guy like,
well, that's a crazy thing about Will Zalatoris. You know what I mean? What do you think his bank account's worth? He's probably worth $20 million. I don't know, maybe 15. He's done well the last 3 years, and I'm sure he has and lots of endorsements, but like we're talking about 110 million when you look at that, right? That it's astronomical, and to turn that down, it's that's a tough call, for sure. Yeah, and then for PGA then to kind of turn their back on you, saying, "Hey, don't do it because we have a plan, etc." And then them go, you know what I mean, without notifying the players about this deal, and then it gets announced before even the players found out. I don't think they were very happy.
Totally, and it's interesting to see what like Saudi's long-term play is gonna be here. Like, I'm curious to hear what you think, but I mean, to me, it seems like they probably at least want to maybe host like, I don't know, the Olympics eventually, maybe some World Cups. That like I think they're starting small, but their play is going to be astronomical. And maybe they start paying, because I know like when people win gold medals, for example, like you don't get a lot of money. Maybe now they're like, oh, here we'll offer you this amount of money for winning these gold medals or medals and stuff. And like it's easy to pay your way through sports, especially when a lot of these athletes, like when it's difficult for them to make a living. I know in tennis it's a big thing where if you're ranked outside the top 100, like frankly, it's really, really hard to make a living.
Yeah.
And you see that consistently in some other sports as well.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what their end game is, but I do believe that again, I've used the term before, but sports washing. I think it's like, how does Saudi, if you look at it, like how do they improve their reputation on an international level?
Yeah.
This is probably the easiest way to do it because you can throw money at it very easily. And then what happens, right? When it actually looks at investments into, the oil and gas industry, they're probably trying to build up a tech industry. They're trying to build up all sorts of different industries. And the investors have certain criteria, right? These large institutional investors, it has to be, ESG, there has to be certain human rights, there has to be whatever. So they want to be able to start checking off those boxes. And I think by doing it in sports and improving their reputation is probably like a path to get there. They have to do other things as well, but that's my take on it. I don't know if this is just about sports. I don't know if the prince is just like a big sports guy and he just wants to have all like the Messis and the Ronaldos, playing in Saudi. Maybe there's a part of that, but I think there's probably a larger plan to it than just that.
Yeah, I mean,
like for instance, like the WTA events that they've hosted there, or even like the next gen, the men's event, like it was pretty empty. You know what I mean? It's not like the Saudi people are just craving for more tennis events there. There's so you wonder if only half of the seats are full, why are they offering? I mean, Nadal, I don't know what the number is, but
must be
it's
big.
It's gotta be big. Like, how big do you think it is? Like, I think it's gotta be, to be like the tennis ambassador, it's gotta be at least 25 million plus, I would think.
I mean,
I was thinking 100 million plus.
So my number was like 100 million. Just given how much, like if you're throwing what you said, like 110 mil to Will Zalatoris, who, with all due respect, nobody really knows who that is. Like unless you're really into golf, like Nadal, like everybody knows who Nadal is, even if you're not a tennis guy. You'd have to open up the checkbook for him, for sure.
Okay, let's just talk about something else that's controversial going on at the Australian Open right now. And this is kind of rounding out the rest of the draw, Alexander Zverev. Okay, so mid-tournament, I think it was probably the second or third day of the tournament, there was, I think it was like a court hearing scheduled for the assault allegations, or I think there's been 2 assault allegations against him regarding ex-girlfriends of his. Nothing's been proven in court. He adamantly denies it. But obviously it's kind of put this dark cloud over him. There's a few journalists that have access to the media, or part of the media, that ask the questions in the post match. The post match, what do you call them? The post match
interviews, press
conferences. There's a guy named Ben Rothenberg. Okay, he's super woke.
Your favorite.
He's super woke, super annoying. He wants the men's Grand Slams to be best of 3, not best of 5. He just wrote this shit book on Naomi Osaka. He's the biggest Naomi Osaka fan. Anyway, every single player, essentially, not just Zverev, okay, the first question he asks is if Zverev should be sitting on the ATP Council. What do they think about the allegations? And then most of the players are stick handling it pretty well, saying, of course, we don't support any sort of physical violence against women. Clearly, who would? But they're saying, but we have to wait and see. We don't know much about it. Then Zverev, after winning that 5-set match in the 5th-set tiebreak, first question, okay, of the press conference was I think it was by Ben Rothenberg, asking about those allegations. Zverev responded by saying, hey, I just finished a 5-set match, a 4-hour match, and that's the first question you asked me. But then what I find even more interesting, okay, and this is all about cancel culture. After that question, there wasn't a single question following in English. Okay, and what happens there is, I think the other journalists, once that question gets asked, if they start reverting back to asking about tennis, they'll come off as maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to come off as not like supporting it, but almost like being indifferent to these allegations. So they're scared now of looking bad from that sense. What's that? You're turning a blind eye, exactly. So there was no English questions about tennis, and this is how that starts to happen. Okay, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think so. I didn't know that he was going around asking all the other players about it. I think I just don't think there's much of a point to that, because you're not going to get like anything asking anybody else about it. Like, everyone's going to give you the exact same answer as you mentioned. I mean, I think he's well within his right to ask him. Even first question after the match, like Zverev, just because you played 5 hours doesn't mean like you can just like sweep this under the rug. Like, I'm sorry, like he's absolutely within his right. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think reporters need to ask questions about what people care most about. And for example, like I was going through the tennis subreddit and just like going through like the top posts, just seeing like what people are most interested about. And like the top like 1, 2, or 3 posts were like all about Zverev and the domestic abuse allegations and all that. And it's like, if people are interested in that and want to know more about that, like they're totally within their right to ask about it. That's kind of my take.
Yeah, I'm not saying they're not in their right to ask about it, and yeah, I'm not saying they're not in their right to ask about it. And actually, it kind of, for this individual, this reporter slash journalist, he apparently he's gotten like more media and interview requests for him from other sources of media, after these questions. So, people love controversy.
Yeah,
obviously. And it's creating, a bit of controversy. We're talking about it right now. So I understand why he's doing it. But it's just interesting to talk a little bit more about. I think Zverev, I actually personally like Zverev. Of course, if this comes out as being true, that he did, like, that would definitely change my opinion on him. But he needs some PR work, because even this has been going on for years now, right? It's just a court date has just been decided on, but these allegations have been circulating for a while, and he's never really stick handled it properly in his responses. I feel like he needs to like hire a real PR team, and either he just has to say no comment, or he has some sort of like, response that, it's a standard kind of response, but he kind of like takes it in different tangents. He'll actually respond to it in different ways, and then like the media just builds on that. So he could probably use a little bit of PR work.
Yeah, he's kind of in a way fueling the fire by even just responding to it. And like when he has comments and other news outlets are reporting on those comments. Yeah, I mean, what the court date is in May or something, is it? So I mean,
it's in May. That's right.
It'll definitely continue coming up until then, and then we'll see. I mean, I haven't read too much about like the actual details of the court case. So we'll see.
Okay, do you think Zverev can win the tournament? Do you think Zverev can win the Australian Open? Do you think, talking about adding fuel to the fire, do you think this is fueling his fire to have a big result at the Australian Open? It didn't look like it last round. He wasn't playing very well against Klein, against a quali, but he's up and down. So what do you think is going to happen in his next match against Norrie? And if he gets through that, could he get through Alcaraz?
I don't think stuff like this will fuel his fire. I think more than anything, it's just a distraction for him, because his mind is in a million different places. Like, I mean, he's thinking about what, like, is he going to face like jail time potentially? Like, I don't know how what the potential punishments will be like. Will he be suspended from
I
the
don't know. I
tour?
assumed it'd be a major fine, but
Well, I don't know.
possibly
Like,
maybe there is jail time.
I mean, maybe at least
I don't know.
some sort of suspension from the
I think
tour.
they're civil. I don't know if they're criminal. I think they might be
Are
civil
they
suits. I'm
okay?
not sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not sure either. So I definitely don't think it's something that like he's like, oh, I gotta prove these doubters wrong, because it's not like anybody's doubting his tennis. They're doubting his ethics off
Right.
the court, which are totally in the right to be questioned, right? Like,
Right.
um,
Okay. I agree. I agree with you. Let's move on. Let's just touch on the women's draw right now. So there was a big upset yesterday. Swiatek lost to this Czech. Man, Czech produce a lot of good tennis players, myself included.
oh yeah,
But she lost to Niskova, some young Czech girl I'd never really heard of before. Swiatek was looking shaky throughout the whole tournament. She almost lost to Danielle Collins, who announced this will be her last year playing. But anyway, Swiatek, I haven't watched much of Swiatek's game, but she's not that good. She's obviously a good mover, but she has no real weapons to her game. And the fact that she's number one in the world, she's still obviously very beatable. And she went out round 3. I don't think she played very well this tournament, but what did you have any thoughts on that?
on Swiatek. I mean, I was surprised she got through Collins. What it was, I think, down 4-2, love 40 or
4-1.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't watch the match last night. I think it was past midnight or something. But I mean,
You know what's interesting right now is the winner of that, which is Niskova, plays Svitolina. Now, if you remember in Wimbledon of last year, or maybe it was the US Open, but Svitolina's run, it was all about Ukraine. Okay. And the defiance of this country rising up through Svitolina. She's now in the round 4 against Niskova. She should win that match. Then she play a quarterfinal against maybe Azarenka, which Belarusian
do they
against.
have some tension there? Or?
Well, she's Belarusian, right? Azarenka and Svitolina doesn't shake hands with Belarusian. There was that tension, remember? I think it was in Wimbledon where they didn't shake hands. Azarenka waited to shake her hand, and then there was all that controversy around. I think they played afterwards, and then it was like all good. Okay. Or she played another Russian, and it was all good. Like they didn't shake hands, but there was like an understanding about it. But the world doesn't seem to be. I guess there's a lot of other conflicts going on in the world. The world's kind of moved on. I don't want to take this too political, but at least in the tennis world, there's no chatter about Svitolina carrying the Ukrainian flag and making a deep run in this tournament. Nobody's talked about her, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just don't think people are in general talking about the Russia-Ukraine war as much as they were last year, and that's kind of
totally
that's the result of that.
It's natural. People move on.
Yeah,
and it's just a war that it's just not getting the same sort of media attention. Obviously, what's going on in the Middle East, and it's just like not top of mind like it was last year.
Totally. And like talking about the tennis, like I expect her to. I mean, Azarenka's been playing quite well, so I expect Azarenka to come through that section. I mean,
I know she got through my girl Ostapenko yesterday, which I was pretty upset about.
Yeah, like this Noskova girl, I don't know anything about her really. I mean, I didn't watch that Swiatek match again, with that being later tonight, dude. I don't know if you were in the same boat. Full transparency, like I was filling out the women's bracket and like doing a little bracket challenge. I didn't know like 60% of the names. Like so many of these players where I'm like,
there's a lot of names.
They come out of? Like, I don't know.
They end with Ova, whatever. There are a lot of Czech, a lot of Russians, a lot of Eastern European names that I've never heard of either. Like, I feel like in women's tennis as well, although we're seeing it now in men's tennis, but there's like, it allows for younger players to do well because maybe you don't need the same sort of physical strength as the men. I don't know. You can counter that obviously with 5, teenagers in the men's draw going deep, but maybe that's part of the reason that you haven't heard of these names, because they haven't been on tour for a while. But I agree that there's a lot of names that I don't recognize, and it's kind of like, and this is for both men and women, but what's up with ESPN's coverage, especially for Americans? You know what I mean? When you're wanting to watch like a good match going on, you know what I mean? Like there's a good matchup, and then like an American is playing, like a Navarro versus like Yastermenka or whatever from wherever, and they're playing the full match of that. Meanwhile, like Dimitrov is playing somebody, or like it's like a crazy good match in the fifth set. Yeah, exactly. ESPN need to figure that out a little bit. That's been going on for years.
I think it's ridiculous. Like, I mean, I understand like ESPN, American, whatever, like American Network, and they want to show their Americans, but it's getting out of control. Like, especially with some of these Americans that are ranked, say, 100 in the world, or that nobody really knows about. That's kind of where I draw the line, where it's like nobody wants to watch these guys play. Like a guy like Shelton, for example, fine. Like, he's an American up-and-coming guy. I think everybody's interested in what he's doing. Sometimes maybe it's even a little too much Shelton, or like Goff. Like, but I understand.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't miss a point of Goff.
Yeah,
but you're right. But then when it's like Tommy Paul against some like nobody, and then there's another 5-set match going on, they'll only play the Tommy Paul match, for example. And the same thing happens in Canada as well. You know what I mean? If Shapo was playing, or Leila Fernandez, or Raonic, or Aliassime, they'll only on like the TSN channels, like the Canadian channel, they'll only show the men's match, or not the men's match, the Canadian match, even though there's another amazing match going on. Like, yes, patriotism is part of it, but like most people are tennis fans over just watching their country person play.
Yeah,
and they need to figure that out.
I wonder if they've done like legitimate analysis in terms of like ratings. Like, maybe it's something where there is like a legitimate correlation where like ratings plummet when Americans aren't on. And if that's true, fair play. I mean, I kind of refuse to believe it, because I feel like, I mean, unless all the Europeans, I guess, are watching on like Eurosport and other networks. I mean, maybe there's something there. But I mean, as a Canadian, I guess I have a certain bias where I don't really care about every single American who's playing. So I mean,
Canadian. I don't really care about every Canadian that's playing either. I typically just want to see the best match. Yeah,
and they do a good job of like, I mean, every time Djokovic is playing, they'll show Djokovic. Every time Alcaraz is playing, they'll show Alcaraz. Or Swiatek. All of Iga's matches are there. But I would rather watch, for sure, like a Dimitrov against Kokkinakis compared to
agreed. Talking about American women, Anisimova. Okay, after taking a break last year, she basically took almost all of last year off for her kind of mental health. She's still super young. You know, she's been doing this for a while, it seems like, but it turns out she's like 22 or 23. You know, she's been, if you actually just follow her on Instagram, you would assume she's completely quit tennis and she's just taken up full-time boating in the Florida Keys and drinking ciders.
Can you blame her?
Then I can't really blame her. She's probably got like $10 million in the bank and she's chilling. You know, she likes hanging out. She seems to like to party. And then she shows up at the Australian Open. You know, I doubt she's been practicing as much as she could have been. She's definitely out of shape a little bit. You know what I mean? Her fitness level probably isn't quite there. But I would say that she's probably one of the, if not one of the most talented women in tennis, because she just shows up and she makes other players look stupid. Like, she kills them. Like, she hits shots. She just kind of dominates points a lot of the time. Now, I've seen her dominate matches 3/4 of the way through, and then something happens with her mentally, and then she completely turns into another player, you know, and loses those. But I feel like if she really wanted to, you know, be number one in the world in the women's game, she could be.
I mean, I think that's a little bit of a hot take. I don't know if I would go as far as to say as she'd be number one in the world. I mean, she's definitely had like an interesting kind of like coming into tennis, where she came kind of out of nowhere onto the scene and then quickly rose up to, I think, like somewhere top 15 in the world. I actually just checked her ranking. I almost didn't believe my eyes. She's ranked 442nd in the world, which is like nuts.
Well, yeah, I guess she didn't have a protected ranking.
Yeah,
and she just doesn't play.
Yeah, but I mean, she's looked good so far.
But still,
Badosa is a great win.
The ranking doesn't mean shit when it comes to her and her game right now.
Yeah. I mean, she's playing way above her ranking. I mean, like,
Do you think she might? Do you think she could beat Sabalenka in the next round? That's going to be a tough one. Sabalenka's looking the best in the tournament.
I was about to ask you the same. I don't think so. I mean, Sabalenka just rolled. What, she went 6-0, 6-0 in like 23 minutes probably, or like not 23
Yeah, it was a
minutes,
joke.
but yeah, I mean, like,
no, I know what you mean. It was a complete joke against Tarasenko or whatever. Listen, I think I don't think if I were to put money on it, I would bet on Sabalenka. But other than Goff, I would think from Sabalenka's camp, this is the last person that you would want to be playing in the fourth round. If you go through the draw, you know what I mean? Whether it's Fretch or whether it's Kotsiak or Doden or Zhang or Polina or Yatstromenska or even Azarenka, or Noskova, I would rather be playing all of those players than Anisimova at this point. So I think it's a bad draw, but I do think she'll get through it just because she's probably playing the best tennis of the tournament so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, if you had asked Sabalenka in the fourth round, if she knew that she was playing Anisimova, she probably would have taken it. Like it's not a bad fourth round draw. I think one player that we haven't talked about yet in the women's draw, who I think is probably the kind of biggest story, is the 16-year-old Andreeva, who came back from what I think it was 5-1 in the third and won in the super tiebreak. I think she's definitely a player to watch. It's like 16 years old doing this. Chris, what were you doing at 16?
Well, Zorik, I was walking around with baggy jeans and skate shoes and just getting into trouble like a big loser. That's what I was doing at 16. Zorik, I'm a little upset because obviously you don't listen to this pod very often when you're not in it, you're not on it.
I listen to it all the time.
Because I've been talking about Andreeva for a while,
Including
last year, and I said, watch out for this girl.
My apologies.
Yeah, I said, watch out. She's the real deal. And even my last pod, going to the Australian Open, I said Andreeva could make her first run in a Grand Slam here. I said Jabeur is on the downslope of her career, which clearly she is. She lost 0-2. People were saying how great Andreeva was to beat Jabeur. I think maybe that's part of the conversation, but Jabeur played the worst match I've ever seen her play. Anybody would have beat her on that given day. Andreeva is definitely going to be the future of the women's tennis unless something crazy happens. Her movement isn't quite there yet because she's like a big girl. She's like, I think she's close to 6 feet tall and she's still only 16 years old. So typically, like, you don't quite have the same sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? The same sort of like movement, you know what I mean? Or ability just to like understand your body when you grow that fast. So I think her movement is a little slow right now, but she just understands the game. She sees the court better than probably, almost anybody in the women's game right now. So I have huge expectations for her. I think her next match against Krejcikova, the Czech girl, she can be pretty good. So I think Andreeva might have trouble with her, to be honest. And then if she does get through that, I don't see her getting through a Sabalenka because she's just not strong enough.
Yeah.
But it is a big story. Okay, buddy. Thanks for coming on. And everyone, thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Love Means Nothing Tennis Pod. Follow me on Instagram, Chris Hasek-Watt. Comment, do your thing. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.